Every soap fan has that scene burned into memory, the one that made them scream at the TV, the one that proved The Young and the Restless doesn't just flirt with shock, it marries it. For longtime viewers, the day our favorite, or most hated, villain met a gruesome end in an industrial trash compactor wasn't just an episode, it was a pop culture milestone. The image of that spinning, crushing metal, the desperate cries, the disbelief, it all cemented one of the most unforgettable exits in Genoa City history. But now, on the anniversary of that shocking death, there's a whisper moving through the fandom, a question so wild it almost feels sacrilegious to speak aloud: what if they're not really gone? The legend of the trash compactor death. The early 2000s in The Young and the Restless were a different beast, louder, darker, more operatic. When the writers penned the downfall of the show's reigning villain, they didn't settle for an overdose or a fiery car crash. They went industrial. The character, cunning, manipulative, and absolutely fearless, had spent years weaving webs around the Newmans and Abbotts, using charm and deceit to topple Genoa City's elite like chess pieces. So when karma finally came calling, it arrived in the unlikeliest of places: a grimy warehouse, a confrontation gone wrong, and a mechanical monster humming in the background. As the compactor roared to life, fans watched through tears and gasps as the villain met their demise in the most literal example of being crushed by their own machinations. The scene became legend. It was camp, tragedy, and poetic justice all in one. Viewers debated whether the writers had gone too far, and secretly loved that they had. A soap death, or just a pause button. But this is The Young and the Restless, where death is merely an inconvenience if the story demands it. Fans who've been around long enough know that final rarely means forever. Remember when Adam Newman was presumed dead, only to return with a new face and a vengeance? Or when Diane Jenkins was murdered, only to stroll back into Genoa City years later, very much alive and more calculating than ever? So what if, just what if, the trash compactor didn't finish the job? The argument for a comeback is stronger than it might seem. Soap logic is a malleable art form. If you squint hard enough, any fatal situation becomes survivable. Maybe the body was never found. Maybe a mysterious benefactor pulled them from the wreckage. Maybe there was a switch, a twin, a clone, a body double. After all, this is a show that once featured Victor Newman holding a mock funeral just to test who would show up. And the timing couldn't be more perfect. The Young and the Restless has been in the middle of reinventing itself, pulling in legacy characters, reviving old rivalries, and layering nostalgia with modern stakes. A resurrection now wouldn't just shock viewers, it would ignite them. The villain who defined a generation. Part of what makes this potential return so tantalizing is how deeply this character changed the show during their reign. Before their arrival, Genoa City's elite were used to playing dirty, but this villain brought an entirely new flavor of chaos. They didn't just manipulate lovers and business partners, they rewrote the rules of ambition. Their schemes weren't impulsive, they were architectural. They made power a game of artistry. Every smirk was a move. Every whispered secret was a time bomb. Their impact was so seismic that even after their supposed death, the shockwaves continued to ripple. Characters who crossed paths with them were never quite the same, some haunted by guilt, others obsessed with vengeance, a few secretly nostalgic for the thrill of having such a formidable opponent. It's been years, yet fans still quote their lines, meme their expressions, and debate whether their downfall was truly deserved. That's the mark of an iconic soap villain, one who transcends their exit to become myth. The clues fans refuse to ignore. Of course, part of what fuels the current, they're alive, theory is The Young and the Restless itself. The show has been dropping hints, subtle enough to deny, blatant enough to discuss. In the last few months, dialogue from Victor, Jack, and Nikki has included suspiciously vague references to unfinished business and people we thought were long gone. A mysterious investor has been buying up properties connected to Newman Enterprises' past scandals. And most notably, a scene featuring a shadowy figure watching a news clip of Genoa City's elite, from an undisclosed location, set social media ablaze. Some viewers swear the silhouette matched our dearly departed villain's frame. Others point to the soundtrack, the faint musical motif that used to accompany their most deliciously evil schemes. It played for only 3 seconds, but that was enough. Fans caught it, and fans remember. Why now? Resurrecting a character is a delicate art. Do it too often, and it cheapens the emotional stakes. Do it too rarely, and the show risks losing its flair for drama. But this anniversary offers something few opportunities do: emotional symmetry. The current storyline, with power struggles erupting between the Newmans, Abbotts, and the ever-calculating Audra, feels ripe for an old puppet master to step back onto the board. The younger generation, Kyle, Summer, Adam, and Claire, have been trying to forge their own legacies, often repeating the sins of their parents without realizing it. What better way to remind them of history's teeth than to bring back the very villain who nearly destroyed their families the first time around? Imagine the chaos. Imagine the confrontations. Imagine Nikki Newman, face to face once more with the person who tormented her decades ago, realizing they've returned not for revenge, but for redemption. Or maybe for something far darker. Soap operas thrive on the unthinkable. At its heart, The Young and the Restless has always thrived on reinvention. It's not a static show, it breathes, mutates, and mirrors the times. When the world changes, Genoa City changes with it. And in 2025, audiences are craving big swings again, audacious storytelling that honors legacy while delivering gasp-worthy twists. Bringing back a villain who died in a trash compactor, the most theatrical demise imaginable, is exactly the kind of audacity daytime television needs. It wouldn't just be a resurrection. It would be a commentary on soap opera immortality itself. The character would become both myth and meta, a walking embodiment of how no story ever truly ends in Genoa City, just as no character ever fully disappears from the collective consciousness of fans. The emotional fallout. If the writers do decide to pull this off, the emotional fallout would be immense. For the characters who thought they'd buried their demons, quite literally, this return would reopen wounds they've spent years trying to close. Victor might find himself revisiting the ruthlessness that defined his early career. Jack, always torn between moral integrity and ambition, could spiral into paranoia, fearing history repeating itself. Nikki's sobriety, already fragile, could face its biggest test. And Sharon, the eternal survivor, might be forced to reckon with how much forgiveness she truly possesses. But perhaps the most interesting reaction would come from the younger characters. Claire, newly trying to define her path apart from the shadows of others, might see in the returning villain a distorted mirror, a warning of what manipulation and trauma can breed if left unchecked. And Kyle Abbott, his recent pattern of poor decisions, emotional entanglements, and reckless alliances could make him dangerously susceptible to the influence of a returning master manipulator. A mentorship in evil, reborn for a new generation. A resurrection story done right. If there's one thing The Young and the Restless knows how to do, it's legacy storytelling. Diane Jenkins' comeback worked because it wasn't a gimmick, it was a psychological unraveling. Adam's many returns succeed because they explore identity and redemption as much as revenge. This resurrection could follow that same model. The trash compactor villain wouldn't just stroll back into society for a martini and a smirk. They'd return changed, physically scarred, emotionally complex, driven by motives that blur the line between vengeance and justice. Imagine them haunting Genoa City like a ghost who refuses to fade, not to destroy, but to correct what they perceive as the rot that's infected the town in their absence. And the ultimate twist, perhaps their survival wasn't luck at all. Perhaps it was planned. What it says about us. Soap fans are a loyal, emotional, and beautifully contradictory bunch. We mourn the deaths we later demand to be undone. We cry when villains fall, then cheer when they rise again. And maybe that's because we see something in them, the resilience, the reinvention, the refusal to be erased. On this anniversary, as we rewatch that infamous scene, the roar of machinery, the scream cut short, the silence that followed, we don't just remember a character. We remember an era. We remember how it felt to be truly shocked. And in a world where television often plays it safe, The Young and the Restless gave us permission to dream the unthinkable, that even from the jaws of a trash compactor, a legend could crawl back to life. The final word for now. So will the villain rise again? The official word from CBS and the Y&R brass is, unsurprisingly, no comment. But daytime fans know what that means. Wait and see. The set walls are buzzing. A familiar shadow could soon fall over Genoa City again. And if it does, it won't just be another comeback. It will be an exorcism, of the past, of the guilt, of the belief that evil ever truly dies. Because in the soap universe, even the most crushed spirits have a way of piecing themselves back together. And somewhere, in the hum of machinery, you can almost hear it, a faint, defiant laugh echoing through the years, daring us to believe in the impossible all over again.